You're listening to Permission To, the podcast where we dive into the science and soul of owning your worthiness as a perfectly imperfect human being. I'm your host, Sam Dew, psychotherapist, positive psychology coach, mama to a beautiful 5-year-old Amelie, and passionate advocate for living an inspired life. My aim is to show you that you have full permission to own your worthiness so that you can embrace your true nature and begin walking boldly toward your dreams. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Permission To. We are in the final countdown of school holidays here. So we have had 6 weeks off and my big girl is going back to school on Monday. Whilst I'm feeling so grateful for all the family time that we had, it's had its challenging moments. So I'm also feeling, you might be able to hear it in my voice, like I'm just feeling really excited about 2023, all the ways that I'm going to be able to support you this year, including like really stepping up this podcast. Just really excited. And I have got an episode coming on my plans for the year and behind the scenes and how I'm going to support myself with my plans and my goals this year. But today I wanted to share a really special episode, Permission to Prioritize Connection and Sisterhood. And in this episode, I'm going to explain a little bit about why I think connection and sisterhood is so important. And I'm also going to share a little bit about my story and a bit of my experience healing some sisterhood wounds from my childhood. And I'm also going to share some examples from Permission Granted. Obviously, always keeping my clients' privacy in mind. These are going to be like really general examples. But I think that sisterhood is so powerful, and I wanted to dedicate this episode to that. First, a little shout out to anyone who's done Permission Granted. We are now in, we're in like the 4th round, which just feels crazy for me. And every single one of those women who have done Permission Granted, many who come back for round 2, would be able to speak to the power of connection and sisterhood, and really having people that you can be vulnerable with and be your true self with. So I wanted to start by saying why sisterhood is so important, and I guess why relationships and group coaching is so important as well, because what we know, and this is coming more from my psychotherapy background than my coaching background, but it's really relevant for anyone who's interested in therapy or coaching, is that if you think about it, right, your core attachments, the way you've learned about yourself, the way you've learned to see others, the way you've learned to see the world, all of that has been created through your relationships with others. You know, like when we're upset as babies, we regulate our emotions through whoever's caring for us and their nervous system. So if mama's calm, then she's able to calm baby down. Or if dad's calm, then he's able to calm baby down. And so we really learn a lot about how to nourish our nervous system through others. And we learn a lot about ourselves. And so it makes sense then in many ways, doesn't it, that change and transformation happens through relationships with others. And this is why I love that books and podcasts, and there's so many free resources about how you can change whatever area of your life you're wanting to change. And I think those things are really effective because, you can still have a sense of a person through a podcast, through a book, but the ultimate way that you are going to get support and be able to change and grow is actually in relationships with others, which is why I love coaching, I love therapy, I love group coaching experiences and sisterhood, because what I have seen time and time again is that change happens in the relationships, and through the relationship it's changing. So it's relationships with others, but also the relationship that you have with yourself, how you talk to yourself. And so sisterhood and the relationships that we have with others around us is a really, 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 really important part of working on yourself, changing yourself, being able to have a well-nourished nervous system. And so I'm going to share a personal example, a bit of my story around sisterhood, and how I experienced some sisterhood wounds, and also how I've been able to heal them. So I was a very sensitive child, like super sensitive, and I felt things really deeply. I probably didn't express myself, so people didn't always know how sensitive I was, because I was also very shy as a child. I would like hide behind my mum. I remember being a little girl and like often hiding behind my mum's leg and being really, really shy. And so I have I've had experiences where I felt, that I had a small group of friends that I trusted, and I had friends that kind of hurt me, embarrassed me, made fun of me, shared like really, really personal, embarrassing stories. This is just a thing that girls often do when they're younger, isn't it? Like you share your secrets, and then someone goes and breaks your trust, and of course that creates that wound. And then what can happen with that sisterhood wound is that we stop trusting people. We start kind of sharing a more filtered version of ourselves because we decide that we can't trust people. So I had a number of experiences like that, but also on another level, particularly this is when I, was coming out of my shell. I was a bit more extroverted, a bit more confident, I guess, in myself once I went to university. But I still noticed, particularly in big groups, because I had been teased as well at school, I was teased a lot about my appearance. I was very, very skinny when I was a child and a teenager, and people often made assumptions that I had an eating disorder, which I did not. But it was very, very like on a deep, deep level. It really hurt me. I felt really, really hurt by the comments that would be made about my weight and my appearance, and the assumptions. And so I think I had learnt that, group experiences aren't safe, like one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three is okay, but groups are not safe. And then I went into social work where all of a sudden you're expected to share all of these things. You go to tutorials and you go around the circle and they want you to share a lot of personal information, doing a lot of work in front of your peers. I found it really, really challenging. And what would happen for me when I was in a group circle is that I would just freeze up. Like I would just shut down. And so I wouldn't say anything. So I was like quite isolated, I think, from a lot of the uni peers that I studied social work with. I had like a really beautiful close group of friends that I studied social work with, but the bigger cohort, I was not I didn't feel very connected with them because I guess I didn't really share a lot throughout the course. And then it was the same when I went on to study family therapy. We had to do a lot of practice in a group, and I would often freeze up and just find it really, really hard. And so eventually I went on to my Gestalt psychotherapy training, which is like a 4-year training experience, totally not related to university, all really in person. And basically you learnt to be a Gestalt therapist by actually receiving therapy in a group setting with other people watching, which, oh gosh, if there was ever a way to put me out of my comfort zone, that was it. Like I used to feel really, really anxious. And so this was a 4-year experience. The first year, at least the first 6 months, I found it like really, really hard. I would be very, very anxious, very, very agitated, and I would just kind of shut down again and not really say much. But this is where I think that this group of people in my Gestalt training, which by the way was men and women, but I think that they really helped me to heal my sisterhood wound, because particularly about bigger groups. So what happened in the group was, I think after maybe 1 or 2 weekends of me just really not saying a lot, I just decided to be brave and to share that I was feeling really, really nervous and that I didn't want to share, I didn't want to talk, but I was used to people judging me about not talking, so I would shut down. And this is what's so powerful, because the group and the facilitator were just like, that's okay, thank you for letting us know. And that sounds so simple, but actually what they gave me, I feel like it was one of the most beautiful gifts I've ever received in my life, was they accepted me for who I was, instead of projecting on me their idea of who I should be, like that I should be someone who's loud, or that I should be someone who is confident and happy to share in a group, because I've already done loads of therapy training at this point. No, they just totally accepted me. And I remember one beautiful woman in my training program saying to me, I do really love hearing your voice, Sam. Like, there's something about listening to the sound of your voice that's so comforting to me. So I do enjoy hearing from you, but I also, accept that you don't always want to share. And honestly, this was like a massive permission slip for me, because here I was for the first time in my life with a group of people where I was really vulnerable. Instead of just pretending that I wasn't interested and just not saying anything, I'd been really vulnerable and gone, hey, I get so anxious in big groups. Like, I just feel like I'm going to shut down. And then they had all fully accepted me for who I was. And yeah, it was really interesting, because there's something called the paradoxical theory of change in Gestalt, and it's literally basically in essence that the more that you see yourself and accept yourself for where you are in that moment, the more you are able to change. And that was a really interesting experience for me, because I began to open up and I shared very deeply and created so many beautiful new sisterhood and connections in that 4-year experience. But I think that happened because they accepted me, they allowed me to be vulnerable, and I took that brave step and was vulnerable. And so I just want to share that, because I think it is so, so powerful, because so often we get messages in society, like especially in our childhood, like, oh, she's too shy, she's too nervous, she doesn't speak up enough, or, she doesn't participate enough. And we get all these negative messages about ourselves, and we can absorb them and have a sense of shame, that there's something wrong with me because I don't talk up enough in big groups, or because I don't want to share in big groups. And actually the whole process of moving through that shame and becoming compassionate and accepting of ourselves, it often does need to happen in relationship to other people. I love what Brené Brown says about shame. Shame dies when our stories are told in safe places. And so I was very, very blessed to have such a skilled facilitator and a space where I could be brave. And I'll always be grateful for that. So I wanted to share that example of sisterhood and how I was able to heal some of those wounds about my relationship to others. And I also wanted to share how this is really, really relevant in my group coaching container, Permission Granted, because an interesting thing came up probably in the first or second year of Permission Granted. This started to come up, that people started saying to me, in the group, I feel like I can be more myself in Permission Granted than I can with my friends who have known me for a really long time, or like really good friends. And a lot of the women in the group were saying, yeah, I feel the same way. And I guess what had happened there was that we had created a container where there was as much safety as possible for people to be brave and to be themselves. And it really helped the women reflect on how they often are filtering themselves even with their friendships. And so often this comes from the sisterhood wound. So an invitation today to think about, like, how do you show up in your friendships at the moment? How do you show up with your sisters? With women that you consider your sisters, your really good friends. And are there any wounds from your childhood, from your teenage years, from, times that you've been hurt? And does that affect how you show up? Are you filtering yourself? And, they're absolutely, if we're being discerning and there's parts of ourselves that we don't want to show to friends because we have decided intentionally to do that, that is absolutely your prerogative. Like you don't have to be vulnerable with everyone. You don't have to show your true self to everyone. But ideally with that sisterhood and with those really special close friends, we want to be able to be really honest and show our true selves. And so, an invitation to get really honest with yourself about how connected you feel to your friends, how much do you feel like you can be yourself. And the other thing I wanted to say that also came up in Permission Granted. Before I go on, I did want to say as well, what's really interesting in Permission Granted, it's like an experimentation, like a container where you can experiment with different ways of being in your life, and then you can take it out into the world. And so what happened was that a lot of women began to share stories of how maybe they'd been hiding certain parts of themselves from their friends, or wearing certain masks, and they'd started to peel off those masks and show more of their true selves to their friends. But this was because they'd been able to practice it in Permission Granted, in that relationship with myself as their coach and with the sisterhood of Permission Granted. So I think it's really powerful to think about, if you are going to do any coaching this year or have a group container, to think about how that's going to feel beautiful and nourishing and supportive to have that sisterhood in the moment, but also it is going to then transform the way you relate and connect with others outside of the experience. And I think that's really important. The other thing I just wanted to talk about is nervous system, and how, it's important to be around other people who have, who know how to nourish their nervous systems. And so some interesting feedback came up around Permission Granted last year, where there were a few women who were showing up and they were like, I don't really need any coaching or any help today, but I just really wanted to be in the energy of the group. Like, I just feel so calm when I'm here. I feel safe and I feel held, and I can just be myself here. And so it was really interesting for me as a coach. I was thinking, it's interesting. Sometimes people are coming and they don't really have any questions or anything they need to talk about. But it's so important that we're just around people who can have that beautiful energy, that calm energy. It might be the way so an invitation to think about that with your sisterhood too. Do you have people that when you talk to them, you just automatically kind of breathe out and go, because they've just got that energy, they know how to take care of themselves, they know how to nourish their nervous system, and so an invitation to think about that. That's my story and a little bit about connection and sisterhood. If you feel brave, I would love to hear from you about your experience with sisterhood. Do you feel like you have it in your life at the moment? How do you feel with groups? Like, do you ever find groups scary or vulnerable? If you do, know that you're not alone. I definitely have felt that way in the past, and I've been able to move through it, but I'm still really discerning with who I share my heart with as well, by the way. That group was a 4-year group that I was in, and I wouldn't just necessarily go and share unless I was with a really skilled space holder and felt like there was a sense of a kind of trust within the other group members. So, I just want to normalize that as well. And that's it for today. We are currently enrolling people into Permission Granted. You can sign up via the waitlist. There is an amazing bonus, a bit of a secret bonus that you get when you sign up to the waitlist. And you also get $500 off Permission Granted. Places are limited to 20 places, and so don't wait if you were thinking about it, but maybe you are a little bit feeling vulnerable or unsure about the sisterhood element. Please get yourself on the wait list, and also feel free to connect with me and have a chat, because I have had so many women who almost didn't do permission granted, but then they decided to because they were really unsure, like, am I going to fit in this container? Am I going to feel like I can be brave and stretch myself in this container? And so I'm so happy to chat with you and be honest with you about if I think it's a good fit. Anyway, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you for the next episode.